Hello, you're watching Eye on Africa. I'm James Creedon. Here are headlines this Thursday evening. Tunisia has ground to a halt under strike action with skyrocketing inflation and unpopular reforms sending tens of thousands into the streets. We'll hear more from our correspondent in Tunis. An appeal for Nigerians to return home. Many Nigerians who fled to neighbouring Niger under the tyranny of Boko Haram are being called on to come back home. More on that coming up. And a Paris Tech Show is honouring startups in Africa with the Africa Tech Award. We'll hear more about that at the end of the bulletin. Thanks for watching. Now we start in Tunisia, where workers across the country downed tools today, Thursday, as they call for their pay packets to be increased and in protest at the government's economic reform blueprints. Public transport, the postal service and dozens of state agencies have all been affected by this nationwide strike. Fadil Alariza joins us now from Tunis for more details on the day's events. Good evening, Fadil. Tell us about what happened today. Give us the details.
Sure. Well, it's still going on, actually. It's a 24-hour strike, so it began just after midnight this morning, and it's going on now. The union managed to shut down key infrastructure today. This was the public sector, 159 state companies and agencies. That includes, of course, the airport as well, airport services, so there are no flights in and out of the country. And, of course, other public transportation. There was the ports, of course, all government services as well. And the union was really confident that today they would get full adherence from public sector employees. And they say that they got about 95% observing the strike, despite actually threats from the government that they would force people back to work, which didn't happen, it appears. And the union is saying that they're discussing further steps, although no announcements of another strike so far.
So major inflation and also reforms that are trying to kind of stop any increase in salaries that would actually help meet the increasing cost of living. That's one of the frustrations. But can you give us a sense of why Tunisians overall are so frustrated and fed up right now?
Yeah, the union was definitely expressing, I think, a broader economic anger that Tunisians have at the moment. Inflation, as you mentioned, which is really hurting ordinary Tunisians in terms of their consumer spending. Even bread, which is a really key staple that particularly the poor depend on. And we're seeing increased poverty rates in the last few years, especially. So the subsidized bread at bakeries is either not available anymore or worse quality, or there have been shortages, especially in the last 6 months, especially. Even before the Ukraine-Russia war, as Tunisia's credit ratings, international credit ratings have been downgraded to Tunisia has been unable to buy on international markets without cash up front. On top of that, we've seen collapsing public services in healthcare, hospitals, schools, transportation with no investment.
And Fadil, the state is bankrupt, right? So they're essentially bankrupt. So there's going to be a bailout, or there's a planned bailout from the IMF to the tune of what, 4 billion? I was seeing, and this is what the strike is partly about, because that bailout has a condition that you can't increase salaries.
Yes, so they've called for basically freezing wages, freezing public sector hiring, cuts to subsidies, privatization of public companies. These are all really red lines for the union, and these are imposed austerity measures that come with the conditions of the loan that are similar to austerity conditions we've seen basically over the last 7-8 years from previous IMF programs. So the government is very desperate to really get this loan, but at the same time, at the cost that the UGC is saying, really it's a red line, and they're saying it's a red line not just for the IMF, but they're also saying it's a red line for the way the president has been.
Sorry to rush you, but in the little time we have left, could this discontent towards Kais Saied that is bubbling up, could it really loosen his grip on power? He's been tightening his grip on power with a series of reforms where he's trying to consolidate. Could it loosen his grip on power? How do you see this playing out?
Yeah, I think this was really the UGT trying to show at the political stage that they have to be taken seriously. So far, they've said that consultations between the president and them have really been pro forma, that they haven't been real consultations, and they're saying that we really need to have a seat at the table, and that you can't really treat us the way that you've treated as the judiciary. We've seen increasing executive power over the judiciary. We've seen him certainly going after political opposition and political parties, but the UGT says us as the union, we're different. We're a national institution that really needs to be taken seriously.
Fadil Alariza in Tunis, thank you for that update. 5 years after Islamic insurgents infiltrated Mozambique's northern province of Cabo Delgado, almost 800,000 people have been displaced in total and 4,000 killed. Now, over the past 2 weeks, more than 15,000 people have fled their homes after violence spiked again. And the jihadists distributed horrific pictures of beheadings. Nadine Tehran has more on that situation in Mozambique.
At least 7 people have been killed and 4 of them beheaded in a new wave of insurgent attacks on Cabo Delgado in the north of Mozambique. Forces from Al-Shabaab or the Islamic State Mozambique are moving southwards towards the province's capital of Pemba, to an area relatively untouched before, spreading panic and mass displacement. Pemba is the base of the South African Development Community's mission to Mozambique, and together with the Rwandan Defence Force, they've restored a sense of security to the area. But this week, the mission lost one of its soldiers and 6 others were injured in an insurgent raid. The mission has been extended to next year, but insurgents are reverting to guerrilla-style tactics. According to the NGO Save the Children, some of the 15,000 people who have fled their homes reported beheadings, rapes, house burnings and abductions. A deadly attack on the city of Parma in March 2021 forced the French energy giant TotalEnergies to shut down a €20 billion liquid natural gas project near the city. Operations will remain suspended until at least next year.
Local authorities from northeastern Nigeria are encouraging Nigerian refugees who fled over the border to Niger to come back home. Now, the violent tyranny of Boko Haram is mainly why they left. The threat in the region has not disappeared. Yet Niger, Nigeria and the UN Refugee Agency are close to a deal that will organise this return. Indeed, thousands of Nigerians have already begun to trickle back, mostly to Borno State. Our correspondent Harold Girard went to the city of Difa in Niger, just a few kilometres from the border.
This team from the UN Refugee Agency gathers information on the people who fled Boko Haram in Nigeria. Bukar Mani Kalumi lost everything back in 2015. His 2 daughters were kidnapped by the rebels.
They threatened me like this, with a weapon. They were saying, let's kill them, let's kill them. And somebody among them said, let's go, leave him. And they went away.
Today, he wants to go back to Borno State, where he's from, even if it's still dangerous there. The catastrophic food situation in Niger drives many refugees to return home.
Yes, of course, I will go back to Nigeria. Where are the fields here? Where can I work in agriculture? Even if I have the opportunity, I can only have a field that's 15 kilometers away.
The UN Refugee Agency can't prevent those people from returning home, but it has to inform people of the last jihadist attacks on the roads they plan to take.
I tried to advise them about the different risks they are exposed to, because even if they were not directly affected, in a combat zone, stray bullets can always hit civilians. They can get locked in a house without being able to escape. Those are risks we can explain to them.
The agreement between Niger, Nigeria and the UN Refugee Agency to facilitate a safe re-entry has yet to be concluded. But Borno State authorities' incentives already made 4,000 Nigerians come back home since the beginning of the year. The UN Refugee Agency remains cautious regarding the situation.
The situation in the region of Difa is unpredictable. At the moment, we know that non-state armed groups are operating in Niger and Nigeria and are still moving. So there's a possibility of refugees coming back, even if we know that the authorities of Lake Chad countries are making a lot of efforts.
Around 130,000 Nigerian refugees live in Difa's region in Niger. 81% of those who want to go back to their country wish to do so now.
Now, Vivatech is an annual international startup and technology show here in Paris. One of the main awards is the Africa Tech Award, which puts a focus on the most notable African startups across sectors such as health, the environment and finance. Now, the first awards were given out today, Thursday. Our reporters met with the winners.
Rasha Radi was right to enlist in the new Africa Tech contest in the Vivatech show. The Egyptian pediatrician presented her app, Shifa, or Healing, connecting patients to pharmacies. And she won.
With Shifa, you can simply upload the prescription. It will be directed to the nearest pharmacy as per the GPS location. So simply the pharmacy will then accepts, prepares and delivers the prescription for the patient without them having to go look for their medication. Even if the pharmacy doesn't have what the patient needs, it will be automatically forwarded to the next pharmacy and so on until a pharmacy accepts, prepares and delivers hassle-free.
Second category after health, the environment. This Kenyan businessman founded a company collecting and recycling e-waste.
There will also be a huge growth in terms of e-waste. So there has to be a company that is managing this e-waste. We have shortage of some of these rare earth metals, but we have them in electronics. What we need to do is just to change mentality and know that we need to move from the linear way of thinking and go to a circular way where these materials can be kept in circulation for a longer time.
2 years of COVID hit African economies, but they were also a time of growth for startups. $5 billion were invested last year, twice as much as in 2020.
You have real interesting entrepreneurs at growth and accelerators helping those entrepreneurs create their own startups to solve really pressing challenges in their own markets. People are coming up with some really interesting innovations tailored to the needs of the continent.
Some 100 African startups in 7 African countries took part in the Paris show, hoping to boost business and investments.
All right, that brings us to the end of tonight's show. It was produced by Laura Di Bazio. Thanks for watching. Good night.